It took 4 seconds. 4 seconds between the notification sound and the moment my whole marriage turned into a stage play I hadn't auditioned for. I was sitting in my truck, parked under the busted lamp on Whitcomb Street, finishing a cold breakfast burrito I'd grabbed from the gas station on Clark Road. My hands were greasy. My left thumb was still black from the brake job I'd finished 2 hours earlier on Mrs. Patterson's Civic. The engine was off. The radio was off. The only light in the cab was from my phone, propped on the steering wheel, because the screen kept lighting up with names I hadn't heard from in years. The post belonged to my wife. Milena. Her profile picture was the one we'd taken in Cancun last summer, the trip we'd taken after she'd closed the year-end account at her firm, a resort her boss had comped, a flight her bonus had paid for, a photo I'd taken with my own phone because I refused to let a stranger on a pier take the picture of us with a Polaroid they tried to upsell. Smiling. Teeth out. Brown hair catching the wind off the beach. The caption was a single sentence. It's official. I'm starting over. To anyone wondering, yes, I did it first. No, I don't owe anyone an explanation. Underneath was a photo of a divorce decree. Posted to the public feed. No privacy settings. Not a close friend story. Not a private message. Not even an email. On the full, open, visible, indexed for Google Internet. The timestamp said 43 minutes ago. The like count had already passed 900. And sitting in the top comment, the pinned first reply, the one the algorithm had decided deserved to be lifted above all the others, was mine. I had commented first. Before she called. Before she texted. Before she walked back into our house to tell me what she had done with our life. I had commented first, because I had seen the post before she had a chance to explain. Because I had read every word she had written before she had a chance to recraft it. Because somewhere in the 4 seconds between the sound and the truth, sitting in my truck with a cold burrito and grease on my hands, I had understood that I had been married to a woman who had been rehearsing this scene for at least 6 months, and I had been the only one in the building who didn't know there was going to be a performance. The comment I had left had 14 words. It wasn't nice. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't measured. It was honest. By the time Milena got home that night, the comment had been screenshotted, reposted, stitched, narrated, subtitled, translated into 3 different languages, and quoted on a podcast I had never heard of. It had been read out loud on a live stream by a man I had never met. It had been pasted into a group chat with 800 strangers. It had been printed on a t-shirt. It had been turned into a meme with my face cropped out, which, honestly, was a favor. And Milena, standing in the doorway of our kitchen, keys still in her hand, lip gloss still wet, holding the takeout bag from the Thai place she only used when she wanted something to do with her fingers, was the first person to tell me I had ruined her life. I didn't say anything. I just held up my phone. And for the second time in 2 hours, I watched my wife's face learn something about me before I had a chance to say a word. Let me back up. Not to the comment. Not even to the wedding. Back up to the part where I started to understand I had been funding a life I wasn't welcome in anymore. I grew up in Jasper, Alabama. Not the postcard part. The east side, where the houses still had tar paper siding and the mailman only came if it wasn't raining. My dad worked the mill at night. My mom worked the front desk at the Hampton Inn during the day. There were 4 of us kids packed into a 2-bedroom, and the rule in our house wasn't be quiet. The rule was be useful. I learned how to turn a wrench before I learned how to drive. I tore apart my first engine at 13, a small block 350 my Uncle Larry had rolled into our driveway on a flatbed and never came back for. I put it back together in 3 weekends. I learned more from that engine than I ever learned from a textbook. Bolts have a torque pattern. Pistons have a rhythm. And the thing every machine wants, every single one, from a Civic to a Cummins to a washing machine drum, is for someone to take it apart carefully so it can be put back together right. I moved to Chicago at 23 with $900, a duffel bag, and the phone number of a guy named Eddie who worked at a shop on Halstead. Eddie gave me a job. Not a real job. A stand here and don't touch anything until I tell you to job. Minimum wage, no benefits, no schedule, no promises. I took it. I worked it. I watched. I learned. 3 years later, I had my own bay. 5 years later, I had my own shop. 10 years later, I owned a small commercial garage on Kedzie that worked on fleet vehicles for 2 of the biggest logistics companies in the Midwest. 12 employees. 3 shifts. A name that some of the drivers knew because I'd gotten them home in the middle of a snowstorm when no one else would answer the phone. I was not, by any measure, a rich man. But I was solvent. I was reliable. I was the kind of guy who paid his taxes, fixed his own truck, wore Carhartt jackets that had been washed so many times the cuffs were fraying, and slept soundly because the bills were paid and the next month had a plan. Money was tight, but the math worked. Then came Milena. I met her at a fundraiser my shop was sponsoring for the local boys-girls club. She was volunteering at the photo booth. Brown hair cut just below the jaw. A green dress that didn't quite match anything. A laugh that came in 2 stages, a small one to test the room, a big one if the room passed. I didn't go over to her that night. I sent my business partner, Sean, because Sean was the one who knew how to talk to women at parties. Sean came back 20 minutes later and said, "She's not into me." She asked what kind of car you drive. I drove a 2011 F-250 with 240,000 miles on it. I told Sean to tell her the truth. She laughed. Later that night, she slid a phone number across the bar counter onto a coaster and said, "Call me when your truck breaks down." I called her on Wednesday. She picked up on the second ring. I knew then. I knew on the second ring. I knew by the way she laughed at a joke I didn't realize I had made. I knew by the way she asked what music I listened to in the shop and listened to the answer. I knew because I had dated before. I had been ghosted before. I had been benched before. I knew the difference between a woman who was being polite and a woman who was being present. She was present. We were married 14 months later. A small ceremony at a chapel in Wicker Park. 50 people. A preacher who knew my mother. A reception at a restaurant that charged by the plate. No DJ, no band, no projector, no drone. Milena wore a 400 dress she'd bought off a sample rack. I wore my one good suit, the navy one, the one I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral. She didn't want me to wear the navy suit because she thought it was unlucky. I wore it anyway. I told her, nobody ever had a funeral that ended in a marriage. She laughed. I almost cried. I didn't. We moved into a 2-bedroom rental in Logan Square. $1,800 a month. We split it. Both names on the lease. Both of us working. Both of us tired. For the first 6 months, we ate at home. We cooked together. She liked to chop, I liked to sear. We had a system. We had a radio tuned to WXRT most nights. We had a bed we bought from a guy in Pilsen who was moving to Mexico. We had a couch from the alley behind the Salvation Army that I had cleaned and defleed and reupholstered with a 28 kit from Harbor Freight. We had a coffee table made out of a wooden spool that someone had rolled out of a construction site and I had carried home in the bed of the truck. We had a life that was small, and underfurnished, and proud. We were happy. Or I was. Or I believed I was. The first time I ever took something apart and put it back together was the small block 350 in Jasper. I want to walk you through it because that engine is the spine of every choice I've made since. Uncle Larry had rolled it into our driveway on a flatbed at 6:11 in the evening on a Friday in July. I know the date because it was the week my mother turned 38, and the engine was his birthday present to my father, and my father had immediately decided he didn't have time for it, and so the engine sat in our yard under a tarp for 3 weeks while my mother pretended not to be angry about it. I was 13. I was the second of 4. I had been allowed, by household vote, to lift the tarp the day we got it. I had stood in our gravel driveway and looked down at this small block 350, 8 cylinders, cast iron block, the size and shape of a watermelon on top of a watermelon, and I had felt something I had not yet had a word for. I had felt that thing machines do to people who are good with their hands. They invite them in. The first weekend, I did nothing. I just sat next to it in a lawn chair. I looked at every bolt. I counted them. 63 bolts on the outside that I could see without tools. Another I guessed at, somewhere inside, hidden under the valve cover. The second weekend, I borrowed a socket wrench set from Eddie's older cousin, a guy named Lonnie who worked at a Napa on 4th Street. I borrowed it for 2 hours and brought it back and then sat outside on the porch and drew, in pencil, in the back of a math notebook, a map of every bolt and every line. I drew the cylinders from above. I drew the timing chain from the side. I drew the crankshaft from underneath. My mother came out to call me for supper. She looked at the drawing. She said, "What is that?" I said, "It's the engine." She said, "The engine for what?" I said, "For when I grow up." She looked at the drawing again. She said, "Okay, baby. Eat your supper." The third weekend, I took it apart. I did it carefully. 1 bolt at a time. I laid each bolt on a strip of cardboard and labeled it with the position it had come from. I labeled, in pencil, in handwriting a 13-year-old could barely read but a 13-year-old could write if he concentrated. I labeled the head bolts, the pan bolts, the timing cover bolts, the water pump bolts, the bell housing. I labeled them in order. I labeled them by torque. I labeled them by depth. It took me the better part of 2 days. And then, Sunday evening, with the engine in pieces on the driveway, my father came out. He stood over the parts. He stood over the labels. He looked down at the cardboard. He said, very quietly, "Can you put it back together?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "How do you know?" I said, "Because I took it apart carefully." He nodded. He said, "Good." That is the most he ever said about the engine. He never asked me how. He never asked me when. He never asked me why. He decided, on the spot, that the boy in the driveway would put the engine back together, and he walked inside, and the responsibility became mine. And I had it. I had the responsibility for 11 months. They were the most important 11 months of my life. I rebuilt that engine in the backyard of a tar paper house in Jasper, Alabama, with borrowed tools, with a math notebook map, with my mother's permission, with my father's vote. I rebuilt it carefully. I torqued every bolt. I set every gasket. I seated every ring. I bled the radiator. I bled the fuel line. I bled the carburetor. I set the timing by ear and then by feel, because the guy at the shop told me the timing was set by ear first and by feel second and by the book third. When I was done, my father and I rolled it onto a wooden dolly, onto the back of a borrowed truck, and we took it down to Lonnie's Napa, where a man named Mr. Calvin installed it onto a test stand. Mr. Calvin turned the key. The engine caught on the second pull. It idled. It revved. Mr. Calvin looked up at me. He said, "Who rebuilt this?" I said, "I did." He said, "How old are you?" I said, 13. He said, "You got a job when you turn 16. You come back. You come back to me." I said, "Yes, sir. That engine is the reason I am the man I am. That engine is the reason I knew that the comment I was about to leave had to be 11 months of discipline compressed into 14 words. That engine is the reason I had the patience. That engine is the reason I knew the torque pattern. The first year, she finished her master's in marketing. I paid for it. Not all of it, but most of it. The tuition, the books, the late-night Ubers to campus when the L stopped running. Year 1 tuition, $22,400. Year 2, $23,200. The bar prep materials alone, the summer she decided to take the Series 7 just in case, another $1,950 I never mentioned and she never asked about. I did it because I wanted to. Because I could see the way she lit up when she talked about brand positioning and customer acquisition. Because I had never been with a woman who had a word for what she did and not just a shift. The second year, she got hired at a boutique PR firm downtown. Her salary was more than mine for the first 6 months. I never once made a thing of it. I was proud. I told my mother on the phone. My mother cried. My mother, who had raised 4 kids on a mill worker's wage and a hotel desk worker's wage, cried because her son had married a woman who had a career, not a job. The third year, she got promoted. That's when the gear shift happened. Quiet. Like a transmission slipping, where you don't know it's broken until you're already 50 miles from the shop. She started traveling. Chicago to New York, once a quarter. Then Chicago to Los Angeles. Then Singapore. Then a week in London. The suitcase went from a carry-on to a checked bag to a hard-shell roller that cost more than my entire toolbox. The shoes lined up by the front door went from 2 pairs to 11. The skincare routine migrated from the bathroom shelf to a dedicated vanity in the bedroom that had not been there 3 months prior. The company card she kept in her wallet, the one tied to the joint account I funded the backup payments on, in case the firm forgot to reimburse, got used more weekends than it got used weekdays. I saw the statements. I closed them. I never said a single word out loud about them. I just paid them. I just paid them because that is what a man does when the math is working and the house is standing. I was still in the shop. Same hours. Same boots. Same customers. Same broken knuckles. The math still worked, but the math was working for something else now. I never asked her to stop. I never said, I don't like this. I never once said, hey, babe, why are you carrying a different bag to work every day, and is that bag the same one Carla Carson posted from her honeymoon in Positano? I never said the thing a man says when he knows something is off but doesn't know how to say it without sounding small. So I worked. I came home. I cleaned the kitchen. I paid the electric. I laid out the recycling bins because she hated when the recycling bins were inside. I watched her walk out the door in clothes I couldn't have named, and I walked into the shop and fixed trucks. For 3 years, I funded a life I wasn't welcome in anymore. That's the part one didn't see until I read the post in the truck that night. I had seen the signs. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't blind. I wasn't delusional. I just wasn't brave enough yet to act on what I was seeing. There was the night she came home from a client dinner at 1:30 a.m. and could not tell me the client's first name. She said, it was the Hendricks account. There was no Hendricks account. I knew this because I had been the one who set up her firm's bookkeeping system. There was no Hendricks account. But I said, okay, honey, how was it? And she said, long. And that was that. There was the week she lost her laptop charger at the office and bought a new one from a boutique Apple reseller in Lincoln Park that charged 4 times what the same cable cost at Best Buy. I didn't say anything. I noticed. There was the night her phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m., and she rolled over in her sleep to look at the screen, and I saw the preview, and it was from a contact saved as D. Hill, and the message was 3 words, I miss you. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I lied there in the dark and stared at the popcorn ceiling and waited for her to put the phone down. She put it down. She rolled back over. She slept. I did not sleep. There was the time her assistant, Becca, called the house line by accident instead of Milena's cell. Becca said, oh, sorry, wrong number, and hung up. I said, no worries. I wrote down the time. I wrote down the number. I never called Becca back. I never mentioned Becca to Milena. I just wrote it down, and I put the paper in the lockbox in the closet, and I went back to work. There was the Tuesday night, about 4 months in, when Milena came home and put 2 suitcases by the front door. I said, "Where are you going?" She said, "Singapore." I told you. I said, "When?" She said, "I told you on Monday." I had not been told on Monday. I had been at the shop. I had been under a Tahoe, replacing a timing chain. She had texted me a "have a good day" at 8 a.m. and a long day, going to bed at 11 p.m. There had been no Singapore. There had been no Tuesday. There had been a Tuesday full of brake fluid and a lunch of cafeteria fries and a phone call from a customer who had to be talked down from a tow charge. I didn't say, "You didn't tell me." I said, "What time's your flight?" She said, 11 a.m. Wednesday. I said, "I'll pack you a lunch." She said, "They have food on the plane." I said, "I know. I'll pack you a lunch anyway." I packed her a lunch. 2 ham sandwiches. A bottle of water. A bag of chips. A napkin with "I love you" written on it in ballpoint pen. She left the sandwich in the fridge when she got back 6 days later. There were signs. There were always signs. I had just decided, somewhere around month 32 of being married, that I wasn't going to be the one to ask the question. I had decided that if Milena had something to say, she could say it. I had decided I wasn't going to interrogate her, wasn't going to track her phone, wasn't going to become the kind of husband I had seen my father become once, the kind who went through pockets and made a wound out of every sock. I had decided, for better and worse, that I was going to be a man who worked. Who came home. Who paid the bills. Who left a light on. And if it wasn't enough, then it wasn't enough. And I'd walk away with what I came in with. And that would be the end of it. I didn't know that, in the meantime, she was preparing a stage for me to walk out onto. I didn't know she had been rehearsing it for months. I didn't know there would be a post. I didn't know there would be a comment count. I didn't know there would be a feed I couldn't get out of, no matter how many times I refreshed. I didn't know that the woman who had laughed at me at the bar, who had picked up on the second ring, who had worn the 400 dress, who had laughed the second time I told the funeral joke, that woman had quietly, methodically, with the same discipline I'd used to assemble the small block 350, been planning to dismantle the marriage I had spent 3 years paying for. When I posted the comment, I wasn't thinking about going viral. I was sitting in the truck, burrito in one hand, phone in the other, and I had read the caption. I had read the photo. I had seen the decree. I had seen the comment section. Some of the comments were celebrating her. Some were tagging me. Some were women I had never heard of, posting things like "Queen" and "You deserve better," "Babe" and a single, perfectly placed eggplant emoji. And something inside me, not anger, not yet, something more like a small, sharp shock of recognition, clicked. Like a piston hitting top dead center. Like a bolt finding its hole. Like the moment in the shop when you lift the hood and the engine tells you exactly what is wrong with it. I scrolled to the comment box. I typed. I posted. I turned the truck on. I drove home. I forgot the burrito on the dashboard. The comment was. I paid for half of this. Talk to me like a person. 14 words. No punctuation drama. No hashtag. No all caps. No emoji. No exclamation points piled high enough to signal something I wasn't feeling. No call out. Just the truth, the way I'd been trained to write parts orders at the shop. Plain words. Plain math. Leave it on the counter. Walk away. What I didn't know, what I would only learn at 2:47 a.m., when Milena got up to check on something and I heard her typing furiously in the bathroom, the bluish bathroom light reflecting off her face, her thumbs moving faster than I'd seen them move over the keyboard in our entire marriage, was that the comment had been screenshotted already. By a woman named Tanisha in Milwaukee. Tanisha had a following of 280,000. Tanisha had a podcast called Receipts. Tanisha had reposted my comment with a caption that said, "This is how you do it." 14 words. No apology. No begging. By 3:30 a.m., the post had 14,000 likes. Milena had posted 3 more clarifications and deleted 2 of them. The divorce decree image had been taken down and replaced with a black square. The black square had been replaced with a new caption that said, "Some of you don't know the full story, and I'm going to tell it soon. But first, I need to address the comment." By 6 a.m., when I woke up and turned my phone back on, the comment I had left had 38,000 likes. It had been stitched by 6 different accounts. It had been put on a t-shirt by a streetwear brand in Atlanta. It had been read out loud on a live stream by a man I had never met who called me an American hero. By 7:30 a.m., I was trending in 3 cities. By 8 a.m., Milena was in the doorway with the Thai food. Between 4 a.m. and 7:42 a.m., my phone had not once gone dark. It had been like sitting next to a hive. The screen had woken me 4 separate times. I'd ignored 3 of them. The 4th, when I finally answered, was Eddie. Eddie said, "Brother, are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine, Eddie." He said, "You don't sound fine." I said, "I will be fine." He said, "Do you want me to open the shop?" I said, "Yes. Please. Open the shop. I'll be in by 7. He said, "What bay?" I said, 3. Mrs. Patterson first. He said, "Patterson, again?" I said, "Again." He said, "You really like that Civic?" I said, "It needs me." He laughed. We hung up. I lay in the dark for another hour. I didn't search my name. I didn't read the screenshots. I didn't open the comment again. I just lay there, on my side of the bed, with my eyes closed, while my wife, who had not slept next to me, who had walked back in at 1:20 a.m. smelling of cigarettes she did not smoke and a perfume she did not own, slept 3 feet away. I concentrated, very carefully, on the rhythm of my own breathing. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. That is how I made it to morning. That is how I made it to the truck. That is how I made it to Whitcomb Street, under the busted lamp, with the cold burrito, with the gasoline receipt on the seat beside me, with the phone in my hand. "I'm going to explain it to you," she said. She set the bag on the kitchen counter. She did not look at me. She pulled a container of pad CEW out of the bag. She opened it. She did not pick up the chopsticks. "Please," she said. "Let me explain." I didn't say anything. I just leaned against the kitchen doorframe with my coffee. I had not slept. I had not brushed my teeth. I had not turned off the shop's alarm. I had not answered 3 calls from my mother. I was just standing there, in my work pants and a t-shirt with a stain on the collar from a differential gasket I had replaced at 4 a.m., because the phone had woken me up and I had not been able to go back to sleep, and so I had gone to the shop and worked for an hour on a truck no one had asked me to fix, just to feel my hands do something real. "Say something," she said. I said, "You posted it." She flinched. "Just a little. Just enough." "I posted a public statement," she said. "Because I needed people to know." "You posted it before you told me." "You posted a divorce decree before you called me. Before you texted me. Before you said a single word to me. You went online. You made it public. You let the entire internet know before the man who was married to you knew. I was going to. When? Tonight. Tonight. After 43 minutes of public comment. After 900 likes. After your college roommate posted a single black square. After your assistant Becca commented, "You go, girl." After my mother commented a question mark. After all of it. Tonight. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "You ruined it." I didn't lower my coffee. "You ruined everything," she said. You and your 14 words. Do you know what you did? Do you understand what you unleashed? You made it look like I was the villain. You made it look like. You are the villain, I said. She stared at me. You are the villain, Milena. Not because you wanted a divorce. People get divorced. People end things. That's allowed. People fall out of love. That's allowed, too. But you didn't end it. You didn't end it with me. You ended it with everyone. You posted the decree online before you told me. You made it public before you made it real. You let the internet vote on my marriage before I had a chance to vote on it myself. That is what you did. That is what I wrote about. That is what 14 words are about. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Your pad CEW is getting cold, I said. She looked down at the container. She picked up the chopsticks. She set them back down. Whoever she was calling, she didn't get an answer. I heard her leave a voicemail. I heard it twice, because she played it back and started it again. I heard her say, "Hey, baby, just checking in. Hope the morning is going okay. Call me when you can." I heard her say baby. I heard, behind that word, the entire last 14 months, in a single stretch of voice. She had been rehearsing. I had been funding. I want to be careful about how I say this next part, because it matters. The 14 words did not go viral because they were pithy or clever or quotable. None of those things are what I had in mind. The 14 words went viral because of the economy. Because of what was missing from them. Because of how a person could read them and feel, in the bones, the math. I paid for half of this. Talk to me like a person. 6 words in the first sentence. 8 words in the second. 14 total. The first one was a receipt. The second was a request. No insult. No demand. No emotional hazmat suit. No I hope you find happiness. No wishing you the best. No martyrdom. No performative grace. Just, I contributed, and I am asking for direct, unmediated, unvarnished communication. When people read those 14 words, they did not hear anger. They heard clarity. They heard the thing a person says when they have been polite for too long and the politeness finally has to give. They heard a man who has been paying half the cost of living in a marriage that has just been publicly ended, by decree, in advance, and who has asked, plainly, to be treated as a participant in the conversation rather than an audience member. The internet, as it turns out, has a deep, well-documented, well-watered hunger for men who are direct without being cruel. The internet is also, I have learned, deeply tired of men who are cruel without being direct. The internet is full to the brim of cruelty, and cruelty is not the thing people reward. People reward precise, unperformative, plain-spoken emotion. People reward receipts. People reward the second person showing up in the comments section, reading the first person's triumph like it's gospel, and correcting the room without raising his voice. That's what I did. I did not plan to. I did not want to. I had not, in any version of my life I had pictured for myself, pictured becoming a meme by Tuesday morning. I had pictured myself as the guy who fixed the truck so his wife could make the 7:10 train. That was the role. That was the part. The part one had not been told about was that she had replaced me with a different part several months ago and gone on with the show. The 14 words were not a flex. They were the smallest possible version of me showing up in a room where I had been deliberately excluded, and saying, plainly, I'm here, too. By noon, I had to call my mother. She had seen the post. She had seen my comment. She had, of course, commented back, and her comment had been a single question mark, which had become its own meme. A question mark, from my mother, sitting underneath the comment of her son, which had been screenshotted by accounts I had never heard of, with captions like "Mama approves and this is generational behavior." "Ma," I said, when she picked up. "Baby," she said. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay." "You're at the shop?" "No. I'm home." "You're at the house?" "Yeah." "Are you eating?" No. Not yet. There's Thai food on the counter." I looked over. Milena had left. She had left the pad CEW container open. There was a single chopstick still in it. The other was on the floor. "Honey," my mother said. "Listen to me. You did right. I didn't mean to do anything. I know you didn't. That's why you did right. Because you meant it. You said what you meant. You didn't dress it up. You didn't try to make it a thing. You just said it. That's how I raised you." "Yes, ma'am. And you paid for half." "I paid for, Ma, I paid for more than half." "Honey, I know you did. But that's not what you said. You said half." "That's good. That's precise. That's a mechanic talking. I'm proud of that. I'm not trying to be a mechanic talking. I'm just trying to. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to do right by yourself and not do wrong by her. I see that. I raised that. But baby, and I mean this with all the love in my heart, she has done wrong by you. She has done wrong by you publicly. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise, because that's not what Mama did. Mama didn't pretend. Mama told the truth. And the truth is, she ended it online before she ended it in person. That is a thing I'm going to have to sit with, and I'm going to have to pray about. But baby, I'm going to pray about me. I'm not going to pray about her. I'm going to pray for me to forgive her, and for me to forgive the situation, and for me not to be ugly in the middle of it. But I'm not going to pretend. Ma. Let me say this. The comment did what it needed to do. The comment is what it is. The 14 words are out of your hands now. The internet is going to do what the internet does. You cannot unsay it. You should not want to unsay it. You said what you meant. Hold that. Hold it the way you hold a torque wrench. Tight. Steady. Don't over-tighten. Don't back off. Yes, ma'am. And eat something. Please. Eat. I will. I love you, baby. I love you, too, Ma. She held the line for one more breath, the way she always did, the way she'd done since I was a boy calling from the school nurse's office with a bloody lip. Then she said, "Goodbye, baby." I said, "Goodbye, Ma." She hung up first. She always hung up first. I always let her. That was our rhythm. I sat down at the kitchen table. I did not get up for 22 minutes. I didn't go back to the shop that day. I should have. There were 4 trucks on the lift. Eddie had texted me 3 times. Lena from dispatch had sent me an email with the subject line "Where are you?" in all caps, which she never did. I stayed in the house. I sat in the kitchen. I ate the pad CEW because my mother told me to. I read the post again. I read every comment. I read the comments on the screenshots. I read the comments on the comments. I read the comments from accounts I had never heard of, from women in Sao Paulo and men in Manila, from teenagers in rural Mississippi and grandmothers in Cleveland. I read the comment from a man named Devin who wrote, "My wife did this to me in 2017. I wish I had said what this man said. I was too proud to say it plain." I read the comment from a woman named Aisha who wrote, "As a woman who has been through this, this is how you do it. You don't grovel. You don't attack. You just leave the receipt. I read the comment from a woman named Marisol who wrote, 14 words exactly like mine, I paid for the ring she's now wearing for someone else. The internet was doing what the internet does. It was triangulating. It was mapping. It was doing the math on a marriage it had never seen, with no primary documents other than a single screenshot of a single decree, a single profile picture, a single caption, a single comment. And the math, as far as I could tell, was simple, and the math was unanimous. The math was, she owed him a call. The math was, she did not make the call. The math was, he made it for her, 14 words at a time. Sean called at 2:17 p.m. Sean was my business partner. He had known Milena longer than I had. He had introduced us. He had been the one who had walked up to the photo booth in the first place, because he was the one who could talk to women at parties. He was also, not incidentally, the one who had thrown the bachelor party that Milena still pretended not to know about, in a way that suggested she knew more about it than she let on. Sean, on the phone, said only, "Are you inside the house?" "Yeah." "Are you alone?" "Yeah." "Do not go on any more comment sections today." "Why?" "Because Tanisha is asking for a phone interview." "Who's Tanisha?" "She's the one with the podcast. 280,000 followers. She wants an exclusive. She's offering you a 6-figure advance through her booking agent." I looked it up. She's legitimate. Her agent is a guy I know from a Chamber of Commerce meeting. The agent's name is Marcus. Sean, I know. I know. You don't want to do it. I'm not saying you do. I'm saying you should think about it. I'm saying that the shop owes $41,000 to the credit line and we are 6 weeks behind on a loan payment that is going to be called by the end of the quarter, and I'm telling you as your partner and as your friend, that an interview with Tanisha would solve that problem. Sean. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I said I'd call you. I'm calling. I'm telling you. You don't have to decide today. You don't have to decide this week. But you should know what the math is. The math is, the shop is bleeding. The math is, this opportunity is here. The math is, a 6-figure advance from a 280,000 follower podcast is, conservatively, 4 months of operating cost. The math is, I'm not going to let the shop fold because Milena had a bad night. I was quiet for a long time. Where's Milena? I asked. She's at Carla's. Carla's house. Carla's house. Yeah. She's there with Becca and 2 other women whose names I'm not going to say because I don't want to know. How do you know this? Because Becca's husband called me 8 minutes ago and asked me if I knew where his wife was, and I told him no, and he said, she told me she was working late, and I told him I didn't know what to tell him, and he said, I think my wife is at Carla's, and I said okay, and that was that. I sat down at the kitchen table. Sean. Yeah. I want to think about the interview. Good. I want to think about it tonight. I want to not do anything until tomorrow. I want to spend the rest of today in this house. That's fine. The shop is fine. I've got it. Lena's got it. I'll run the floor. Thank you. I'll call you tomorrow. Yeah. And brother? Yeah. Don't post anything else. I'm not going to. Good. Don't. You've already done what needed doing. Let it breathe. Okay. I mean it. Let it breathe. Like an engine after a rebuild. You don't start it immediately. You let it settle. You let the ring seat. You let the oil get everywhere it's supposed to get. You let the gasket cure. You don't run it hot. You don't redline it. You let it breathe. Are you comparing my life to an engine? Brother, I've been your business partner for 9 years. Every time you fix something, You talk about it like it's surgery. I'm using the language I have. I'm letting it breathe. I'm not posting anything. I'm not doing any interviews. I'm not calling Marcus. I'm sitting at this kitchen table, and I'm eating pad CEW. That's from last night. I know. It's cold. Eat it anyway. Okay. Okay. He hung up. I want to skip ahead now. I don't want to give you every minute of that day, because the day was long, and a long day is not the story. The story is what happened after. By the next morning, the comment had crossed 100,000 likes. By noon, it was at 210,000. By the end of the day, Tanisha had reposted it as the still image of a 6-minute voice-only commentary that did not feature my voice, or Milena's voice, or anyone's voice, just a single woman, a microphone, and the comment, read aloud, twice, slowly. Tanisha's video had 4 million views in 48 hours. I had not given an interview. I had not made a public statement. I had not posted again, anywhere, on any platform. I had gone to work in the morning, with grease under my nails and coffee in my thermos, and I had opened the shop at 6:30 a.m., and I had put on music, Alabama Shakes, because that's what we listen to when we're under a lift, and I had worked. I had worked on a Dodge Caravan with a transmission issue. I had worked on a Ford F-150 that had been in an accident. I had worked on Mrs. Patterson's Civic again, because Mrs. Patterson was bringing it back every 3 weeks for the same coolant leak I had been telling her about for 8 months, and I was a mechanic, and mechanics show up. That is what I did. I showed up. That is the part no one tells you about becoming a meme. The part where you still have a job. The part where you still have rent. The part where the trucks don't stop breaking because your wife has decided to rewrite the script. The part where your dispatcher is still sending you work orders and your coffee is still cold and your boots are still muddy and the world is still asking you to be the guy who turns the wrench. That is the part where the joke stops being a joke and starts being a documented experience. When Milena got home that evening, at 9:47 p.m., 8 days into the public version of our divorce, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a notebook open and my laptop closed. The notebook had 3 columns. The first column was the shop's accounts receivable. The second column was the shop's accounts payable. The third column was a list of every dollar I had transferred into a joint account since the day we were married. It was a long list. It was a math problem I had been carrying in my head for years and now finally had the discipline to do on paper. "You're making a list," she said. She was standing in the doorway. "I'm making a list," I said. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious. This is petty. Lawson, this is petty. You're sitting here with a notebook, doing math, after I have been publicly humiliated by, I don't even know, by the entire internet, by people who don't know us, by accounts with cartoon avatars. I'm not making this list because of the internet," I said. "I'm making this list because I'm a mechanic, and mechanics keep receipts." She didn't say anything. Mechanics keep receipts the way lawyers keep case files. Mechanics track the parts. Mechanics track the labor. Mechanics track who paid what and when. I'm not doing this to humiliate you. I'm doing this because I'm going to be standing in front of a judge in 3 months, and I'm going to need to know what I brought into this marriage and what I paid for in this marriage, and the math matters, Milena. The math has always mattered. You just didn't want me to do the math. Tears. On her face. Real ones. Not the kind you post. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said. "Like what?" Like this. Like the world is watching. Like everything is public. Like everything I say is going to get turned into something I didn't say. Then why did you make it public?" I needed. "You needed what?" She didn't answer. "You needed control," I said. "You needed to control the narrative. You needed to be the one who said it first. You needed to be the one who posted it first. You needed to be the one who decided when people found out. You wanted the likes. You wanted the, "You go, girl." You wanted the comments from women you've never met telling you how brave you are. You posted that decree, and you posted that caption, and you posted it publicly, because you wanted to feel like the protagonist of a moment. You wanted to feel like you were ending something cinematic. You wanted to feel like you were on a montage. And you did not stop to think, or maybe you did stop to think and you decided it was acceptable, what it would do to the other person in the marriage, who had spent 3 years funding a life he wasn't welcome in anymore. I closed the notebook. "I'm going to bed," I said. I got up. I pushed the chair in. I walked past her. I did not touch her. I did not look at her. But Lawson. "Good night, Milena." Laws. "Good night." I went upstairs. Behind me, I heard her sit down at the table where I had been sitting. I heard her pick up the notebook. I heard her set it back down. I heard nothing else. I want to talk about the comments for a moment. Not my comments. Not Milena's. The comments that mattered. The comments that came from people who had been in this exact situation. The comments from people who had been left out of their own endings. There was one from a man named Greg, in Spokane, who wrote, "She filed the paperwork before she told me she was unhappy. I never got the chance to fight for it. I just got the chance to read the clerk's email." There was one from a man named Mateo, in Houston, who wrote, "She announced it on Instagram." Caption was, "Single again. New chapter." I was sitting next to her when she posted it. She didn't even put her phone down. She just kept scrolling. There was one from a woman named Alexandria, in Detroit, who wrote, "I did this to my ex-husband. I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. I thought I was being honest. I thought I was being brave. I was being cruel in a costume. I've spent every day since wishing I had just called him." Reading his comment on this post, the way he didn't yell, the way he didn't beg, the way he just said, "Talk to me like a person," I'm crying. I'm crying for him. I'm crying for me. I'm crying for what I took from him by not making the call. I'm crying because he didn't get to be the one to know first. That comment had 42,000 likes. I read it twice. I read it 4 times. I closed my phone. I sat in the dark for an hour. I thought about Alexandria in Detroit. I thought about how she had done what Milena had done, and how she had apologized for it, in public, in the comments section, with the word count equal to mine. I thought about how the internet, for all its cruelty, occasionally made space for a person to come back. I thought about whether Milena would ever come back. I thought about whether I wanted her to. I thought about whether I wanted to want her to. I didn't reach a conclusion. I just sat in the dark. The morning after that, there was a voicemail on my phone. From a number I did not recognize. The voicemail was 19 seconds. "Mr. Lawson Hart, this is Marcus Lyle, calling on behalf of Tinisha Reyes. I represent a number of platforms and producers in the creator economy. We would like to extend an exclusive first look option to you for any long-form media rights related to your marriage, your divorce, your business, your background, and your personal story. We are prepared to discuss a 7-figure advance, with appropriate licensing carve-outs. Please call back at your earliest convenience. We can be flexible on timeline, but we cannot be flexible on duration. There is a window closing. I want to be transparent with you about that. I want to be transparent because Tinisha said you are someone who values transparency, and we want to honor that. Please call back. Thank you." I saved the voicemail. I called Sean. "Sean," I said. "Yeah," he said. "You said 6 figures. The voicemail said 7. Silence. "Sean." "Yeah. I'm here. I'm processing." He said 7. He actually said 7 figures. "Are you sure?" I saved it. I'm listening to it again. Yes. 7 figures. Okay. 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 Should I call him back? Let me think. Hold on. Hold on. I'm going to call Marcus. I have his number from the chamber meeting. I'm going to call him. I'm going to vet this. I'm going to make sure this isn't a podcast trap. I'm going to make sure this isn't some guy trying to get you to sign your life away for content. I'm going to make sure this is real. Hold on. Don't call him back. I can wait. Good. Wait. And Sean? Yeah. Don't tell Milena. I'm not telling anyone. I'm calling Marcus. Hold on. Don't move. I waited. I made coffee. I waited. I want to take you back to the moment right after I posted the 14 words. Because that is the moment I keep returning to. That is the moment I keep reaching for when the days feel long. That is the moment I keep in my pocket, the way a mechanic keeps the part that finally fixes the thing that's been broken. It was 7:42 p.m. I was parked on Whitcomb Street. The lamp above me was out. The burrito was in my hand. The phone was in the other. The screen lit my face. I scrolled through the comments once. I saw the women posting the eggplant emoji. I saw the men posting fist emojis. I saw the captions, the screenshots, the cross posts. I saw the tags. I saw the names. I saw the math. And then I scrolled back to the comment box. And I thought, do I want to say something? Do I want to enter the room? Do I want to be visible in this group text of strangers that's happening in real time, under a post I didn't know was being made, about a life I thought I was living? I thought about the shop. I thought about the bay. I thought about the lifts. I thought about Mrs. Patterson's Civic and her coolant leak. I thought about Eddie. I thought about Lena. I thought about my mother, who had raised 4 kids on a mill wage and a hotel wage, who had taught me to be useful. I thought about my father, who had worked nights and never once made a sound about it. I thought about the night before, when Milena had come home late and said it was the Hendricks account. I thought about D. Hill. I thought about 2:14 a.m. I thought about the popcorn ceiling. I thought about the preview of the text. I thought about I miss you. I thought about the lockbox in the closet. I thought about the paper. I thought about the math. I thought about the wedding. I thought about the 400 dress. I thought about the Wicker Park Chapel. I thought about the navy suit I had worn to my grandmother's funeral. I thought about the way Milena had laughed at my joke at the bar that night, the way she had slid the number across the counter, the way she had picked up on the second ring. I thought about all of it. And then I typed. I paid for half of this. Talk to me like a person. I pressed send. The phone whirred, briefly. I took a bite of the burrito. It was cold. That is what happened. That is what the internet made into a meme. That is what Tinisha made into a podcast. That is what a man in a workshop in Atlanta made into a t-shirt. That is what Devin in Spokane made into a memory. That is what Alexandria in Detroit made into a confession. That is what Aisha in a city I never identified made into a permission slip. That is what Marisol, 14 words in, made into a parallel. A man, parked, eating, alone, typed a sentence. That sentence entered a room. That room was the comment section. That comment section was the internet. The internet then took the sentence, and the picture of the woman, and the decree, and the absence of a phone call, and the existence of a burrito, and the existence of grease under the man's nails, and the existence of a busted lamp, and the existence of a truck with 240,000 miles, and the existence of a receipt, and turned it into a story. The story did not save my marriage. The story could not save my marriage. The story was not about saving my marriage. The story was about not being erased from the saving. About being present in the moment of my own life, instead of being the bystander in someone else's post. About saying, plainly, I was here. I paid. I was present. You owe me the basic decency of a phone call. That was it. That was the whole thing. 43 minutes of public post. 900 likes. 14 words. 1 cold burrito. 1 busted lamp. 1 pair of greasy hands. 1 man, alone, in a truck, who for once in his life refused to be the audience in his own story. Let me tell you about the call I almost made. The night before the post went up, I was in bed. Milena was asleep beside me. The popcorn ceiling was above me. The lockbox in the closet was 6 feet away. The paper in the lockbox was 3 feet closer to my chest than I'd realized. The phone on the nightstand had been buzzing, periodically, with names I did not recognize. I almost woke her up. I almost said, Milena. Are you in love with someone else? Milena. Have you been seeing someone at the firm? Milena. Was last night's client dinner real? Milena. Have you been planning something? I almost said those things. I almost turned to her. I almost reached for her shoulder. I almost made the small gesture that would have started the conversation. But I didn't. Because I had made a promise to myself, somewhere around month 32, that I was not going to be the one to ask the question. That if Milena had something to say, she could say it. That I would not become the kind of husband who interrogated. That I would not become the kind of husband who cried at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday and asked his wife to swear on her mother's life. I had made a promise. And the promise was, be useful. Be present. Be quiet. Be the guy who fixes the thing. Be the guy who pays the thing. Be the guy who leaves the light on. I kept the promise. She did not keep hers. There was another part of that night I have not told you about. The part where she said I miss you to D. Hill, the part where she said hey, baby, just checking in to whoever she was calling at 2 a.m., the part where she said tomorrow and tonight and soon and I've been meaning to and I just need to, none of that was what I heard. What I heard was, an audition. What I heard was, a woman practicing a sentence she had not yet had the guts to say. What I heard was, a woman revising her lines in her sleep. What I heard was, a woman who had decided what was going to happen and was working up the nerve to say it, and the nerve was taking weeks, and the sentence was not coming, and so she had decided to do it on the internet, in public, with the whole world watching, because then she could not back out, because then she would have to stand behind it, because then the courage would come from the audience and not from herself. She did not have the courage to call me. She did not have the courage to sit at our kitchen table and say I want a divorce. She did not have the courage to lie beside me, in our bed, in the dark, and turn to me and say Lawson, I'm unhappy. I'm leaving. She had the courage to post. She had the courage to walk into a photo booth with a brown dress and write a caption that didn't have a single question mark in it. She had the courage to post on the open feed, with no privacy settings, with the photo of the decree, and to let the likes do what the phone call should have done. She outsourced her courage to the internet. I did not. I left mine in the comments section. There is a line from a movie I watched once with my father, late at night, in the living room of our house in Jasper. I don't remember the movie. I don't remember the actor. I remember my father's face when he said the line back to me, slowly, the way you repeat something you have just decided is going to be yours. The line was, the thing about being a man is not that you don't feel. The thing is that you don't get to perform it on a stage. I did not perform it on a stage. I performed it in the comments section. In 14 words. In a truck. In the dark. The internet performed it for me. The internet is the stage. But the internet was not on my face. The internet was not on my hands. The internet was not in my kitchen, where the pad CEW was getting cold. The internet was not in the bathroom, where my wife was at 2:47 a.m., typing furiously. The internet was a screen. And the screen was not the room. The room was the room. The room was me, and Sean, and Eddie, and Lena, and Mrs. Patterson, and the Civic, and the cooler leak I'd been telling her about for 8 months. The room was my mother, who cried because her son had married a woman who had a career, not a job. The room was my father, who worked nights. The room was the family in Jasper. The room was the East Side. The room was the tar paper siding and the mailman who only came when it wasn't raining. The room was me. The internet did not save me. The internet rewarded me for being visible. The internet is a stage that rewards visibility. But the room, the thing that was actually going to have to keep going after the likes stopped, the room did not need a stage. The room needed a torque wrench. The room needed a notebook. The room needed a man who could do the math and who could show up the next morning, with grease under his nails, and lift the hood, and find the bolt, and turn it. That is what I did. That is what I kept doing. That is what I am still doing. You know what the last thing my father said to me was? About a week before he died. He said, "Son, the world is going to try to take everything from you. The world is going to try to take your money. The world is going to try to take your wife. The world is going to try to take your house. The world is going to try to take your name. The world is going to try to take your patience. The world is going to try to take your hands. The only thing they cannot take is the thing you do with your hands when nobody is watching. That is yours. That is only yours. Hold that." I held that. I held it the night I posted the comment. I held it the night I sat at the kitchen table with the notebook. I held it the night I drove to the shop at 4 a.m. just to feel my hands do something real. I held it the morning I drove in with the thermos and the lunch pail and the same boots. I held it. The world did not take my hands. The world did not take my hands. There is one more thing I need to tell you. 1 week after the comment went up, Milena asked me for a coffee. She asked at the kitchen table, at 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday. She came downstairs with her hair in a bun and no makeup. She was wearing an old college sweatshirt of hers that I had not seen in 3 years. She sat across from me. She had a cup of coffee in her hands, the same as mine. "Can we talk?" she said. "We can talk. Without lawyers?" "I'm not sure that's possible. I have a call with my guy on Monday. Can we just have the coffee first?" "Okay. Can we just have the coffee and not lawyer anything?" "Yes." She looked down at her cup. She looked up. "I'm sorry," she said. "Sorry for what?" "For not calling." "That's not enough, Milena." "I know it's not enough. Sorry is not enough because sorry retroactively does not give me the phone call I was owed. Sorry is not enough because sorry does not undo the post. Sorry is not enough because sorry does not unscreenshot the comment. Sorry does not unscreenshot anything. Sorry does not unring any bell. Sorry is the smallest possible version of a person taking responsibility. Sorry is, I don't even know what sorry is anymore. Sorry is the word you say when you want the room to stop looking at you. Sorry is not repair. Sorry is not restoration. Sorry is not a phone call. Sorry is just, it's just a small word, and I'm tired of small words. She nodded. "What do you want?" she said. "I want you to do the math," I said. "I want you to know how much money I put into this marriage. I want you to know how many times I showed up. I want you to know how many nights I sat in this chair. I want you to know what I did not say. I want you to know what I held. I want you to know the size of the thing I am owed. And then I want you to write that down. And then I want you to look me in the eye and read it back to me. Out loud. In this kitchen." She stared at me. I am not going to be cruel to you, I said. I am not going to humiliate you. I am not going to post about you. I am not going to make this a meme. I am not going to let this go viral. I am going to sign whatever the lawyers say I have to sign. I am going to give you a fair settlement. I am going to do that because I am a man, and because that is what men do, and because my father taught me to be useful, and because my mother taught me to tell the truth. But before any of that, before any paperwork, before any signatures, before any of it, I want you to do the math. I want you to know what I gave you. I want you to know what you took. I want you to feel it in your chest before we move on to the part where we pretend to be adults about it. She nodded, slowly. And then? She said. Then we will have the coffee, I said. Then we will have the conversation we should have had 8 months ago. Then we will talk about us. Then we will talk about what you wanted. Then we will talk about D. Hill. Then we will talk about Becca. Then we will talk about the Hendricks account. Then we will talk about Cancun. Then we will talk about all of it. And then, if there's anything left, we will talk about what comes next. She set her cup down. Today? She said. No. Not today. Today I'm going to the shop. I have 3 trucks on the lift. I have a coolant leak I have been trying to fix for 8 months, and this week I am going to fix it. I am going to fix it because it's the kind of leak that has been there for a long time, and that takes longer to fix than the kinds that show up all at once. She looked at me. And on the way to the shop, I said, I'm going to call my mother. She nodded. And then, I said, I'm going to fix the trucks. She nodded again. And then, I said, I'm going to come home. And I'm going to eat dinner. And I'm going to sleep. She nodded. And tomorrow, I said, I'm going to do it all over again. I picked up my coffee. I finished it. I stood up. I washed the cup. I set it in the rack. Then I left. The shop was a quarter mile away. I drove the truck. The same truck. The F-250. 240,000 miles. The radio was off. I drove with the window down. The air in Chicago in October is the kind of cold that reminds you of the places you grew up in. It reminded me of Jasper. It reminded me of the mill. It reminded me of my father's hands in the morning when he came back from the night shift and would not hold a cup because his hands were so cold from the floor. I pulled into the lot. I parked. I got out. Eddie was already there. You're late, he said. I'm 5 minutes early. You're late relative to yesterday. I smiled. He smiled back. Which bay? He said. Bay 3, I said. Patterson Civic First. Stupid leak again. Stupid leak again. Okay. Let's get to it. I went inside. I hung up my coat. I put on my coveralls. I put my phone in the locker. I turned it off. I went into the bay. I went under the lift. I went under the car. I found the leak. I fixed it. It took 45 minutes. It felt good. It felt like the engine in Jasper, the small block 350 I'd torn apart at 13. It felt like the first time I put it back together. It felt like the moment the bolts lined up. It felt like the moment the torque pattern clicked. It felt like the moment the engine turned over, and the timing chain caught, and the pistons went up, and the spark plugs lit, and the whole thing, for the first time, was alive. I came out from under the car. Eddie handed me a rag. I wiped my hands. I looked at them. The grease was still under the nails. The knuckles were still bruised. The skin was still cracked. The hands were still mine. The internet could not take the hands. The internet could not take the wrench. The internet could not take the bolt. The internet could not take the leak. The internet could not take the Civic. The internet could not take the truck. The internet could not take the bay. The internet could not take the morning. The internet could not take me. I went back to work. At 3:14 that afternoon, I stepped out of Bay 2 for 10 minutes. I walked around the back of the lot, behind the dumpster, where the alley cuts through to Troy Street. I stood there for 10 minutes. I did not check my phone. I just stood. The dumpsters smelled like coolant and cardboard and old fryer oil from the diner on the corner. A pigeon walked across the asphalt in a straight line, like it had somewhere to be. A kid on a bicycle, 12 years old maybe, wearing a hooded sweatshirt with the hood up, rode past the alley mouth twice in the same minute, just to feel the wind. I watched him. I thought about my son, except I didn't have a son. I just thought about the version of me at 12, riding a bicycle, hood up, wind in the face, in front of our tar paper house on the east side of Jasper. I thought about what I'd have told that boy if he had stopped and asked me how it was going. I would have told him, it's going. I would have told him, the math is going. I would have told him, the engine is going. I would have told him, the leak is going to take longer than the leak that shows up all at once, but he should keep working on it, and he should not chase it with any wrench that doesn't fit the bolt. And he should not let anyone tighten a bolt he has not first checked. That is what I would have told him. That is what I am telling you. That is what I am telling myself. I went back inside. Lena, at the front desk, did not ask where I had been. She slid a clipboard across the counter. 3 trucks in Bay 1, 2 in Bay 2, the Johnston rig in Bay 4. Pigeon Forge pickup at 4 p.m. coffees on the warmer. You didn't sleep last night. I said, how do you know that? She said, because you look like your dad did the morning after the mill let him go for the second time. I said, that's a low bar. She said, that bar is the floor, brother. Don't drop. I laughed, partly, just enough to break my own chest open. I went back to work. At 3:55 p.m., Mrs. Patterson came in to pick up the Civic. Mrs. Patterson was 67. She was retired from the post office. She had a grandson in the Marines. She had a husband who, 10 years ago, had died in the same hospital as my father had died in, 3 floors apart, for months apart, a fact I had learned at a memorial 5 years ago and never forgotten. She drove the Civic because her grandson had given it to her, used, when she had retired, because Mrs. Patterson didn't like to ask for rides and didn't like to take the bus. She came in every 3 weeks for the leak. Laws, she said, when she walked in. Mrs. Patterson. Did you fix it? I fixed the leak. You sure this time? I'm sure this time. How sure? The kind of sure that has paperwork attached to it. Here. I handed her the receipt. She looked at the receipt. She looked at me. You look tired, she said. I'm a little tired. You sleeping? I'm sleeping. You eating? I'm eating. Laws, you tell me when you stop sleeping and when you stop eating, and I'll bake you something. I've got a cobbler in the oven right now. Mrs. Patterson, you don't have to bake me a cobbler. Laws, I'm going to bake you a cobbler. I'm going to bring it by the house Friday. Don't argue. Okay. How's the wife? Mrs. Patterson. How's the wife? She's fine. You don't sound like she's fine. She's as fine as she is. That's a careful sentence, Laws. Yes, ma'am. It is. She looked at me. She tilted her head. She'd been tilting her head at me since the day we met, 10 years ago, when I had diagnosed a brake issue she had been told by 3 other shops was a transmission. She'd brought the Civic in on a Tuesday. She'd picked it up on a Wednesday. She'd come back every 3 months for an oil change. She'd come back every 3 weeks for the leak. She'd come back every Christmas with a cobbler in a tin pan and a card signed the Pattersons even though Mr. Patterson had been gone 5 years. You take care of yourself, she said. Yes, ma'am. I'm praying for you. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. Not for nothing in particular. Just in general. Just because. Thank you. She took the receipt. She took the keys. She took the Civic out of Bay 3. She did not say anything else to me. She did not need to. Mrs. Patterson had a way of being in a room without taking up a room, and that is the rarest thing in the world, and I had been learning from her for 10 years without ever having said so. I went back to work. For 8 hours, I worked. I tightened. I torqued. I bled the brakes on the F-150. I replaced the wheel bearing on the van. I ran diagnostics on the rig. I did not answer my phone. I did not open the comments section. I did not check whether Tanisha had reposted. I did not check whether Alexandria had posted again. I did not check whether the comment had crossed another 100,000. I did not check whether Marcus had called back. I let the engine breathe. I let myself breathe. That night, in the quiet of the house, after Milena had gone upstairs, she passed me on the way up, said hi, I said hi, and that was the entire exchange, that was the entire marriage in 2 syllables. I went into the closet. I opened the lockbox. I took out the paper. It was a single sheet of notebook paper. I had written on it, in pencil, 12 months ago, after one of the long nights when Milena had come home late and I had stored the detail in case I needed it later. Becca called the house line. 7:18 p.m. April 14th. Caller ID, B. Reyes. Said, wrong number. Then hung up. Blocked number, then unblocked. I looked at the paper. I held it for a minute. I put it back in the lockbox. I closed the box. I locked it. I was not going to use the paper. I was not going to weaponize it. I was not going to put Becca's name into a viral comment. I was not going to do any of the things the internet wanted me to do. The paper was going to stay in the lockbox. The paper was going to stay there until I was done with this country. The paper was going to remain a tool, not a flag. I was not going to be the man who burned down his own life to prove a point about a woman who had burned down his life first. There is a version of this story where I became the meme. There is a version of this story where I became a podcast guest, where I sat on Tanisha's couch, where I gave the exclusive, where I made the 7 figures, where I bought a house with the advance, where I signed the dotted line with Marcus, where I did the whole thing. That is not the version I am telling you. The version I am telling you is, I did not take the call. I did not take the meeting. I did not take the advance. I did not take the offer. I called Marcus back. I thanked him. I told him I was flattered. I told him the offer was generous. I told him I was not going to accept it. I told him the comment had been enough. I told him the comment was not for sale. I told him I was going to keep it where it was, in the feed, in the public record, unedited, unrevised, unmonetized. I told him I was going to keep being a mechanic. I told him I was going to keep showing up at 6:30 a.m. with a thermos and a lunch pail and the same boots. I told him the math of my life did not require a stage. I told him the room was enough. He said, Mr. Hart, I respect that. I want you to know that. I respect that. I said, thank you, Marcus. He said, take care of yourself, sir. I said, take care. I hung up. Sean called 20 minutes later. You did what? He said. I turned it down. You turned down 7 figures. I turned it down. Brother, are you? Sean. Listen to me. The shop is bleeding. The shop owes 41,000. I know. I've got it. I'm going to take a second job. I'm going to drive for Uber on the weekends. I'm going to sell the truck. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to fix this. I'm not going to fix this by selling the comment. Law. I'm not going to fix this by selling the comment because the comment is mine. The comment is the only thing in the last 6 months that has been mine. The post was hers. The decree was hers. The likes were hers. The screenshot was hers. The meme was hers. The t-shirt was hers. The podcast was hers. The 7 figures were hers, in the sense that the offer was contingent on her having done what she did. And the comment, the 14 words, the 4-second pause, the cold burrito, the grease on my hands, the busted lamp, that was mine. That was the only thing that was mine. And I'm not going to sell the only thing that was mine. Silence. Sean. Yeah. Did you hear me? Yeah. I heard you. Are we good? We're good. Take care of the shop for me today. I will. Brother? Yeah. Your hands are still yours. Thank you. 2 weeks after the comment, I met with a lawyer. His name was Harris. His office was on the 34th floor of a building on LaSalle. His window overlooked the river. He had a coffee machine I had never seen before in any office, silver, Italian, the size of a small refrigerator, and he made me a courte-à-deux without asking, because that's the kind of detail a man notices, the kind that tells you he has a cook, the kind that tells you he bills by the quarter hour. We sat across from each other. He had 3 folders open. This is going to be ugly, he said. How ugly? If she contests on grounds, ugly. If she doesn't, ugly. If you two go to mediation, ugly. If you don't go to mediation, ugly. The only clean version is the version where both of you agree on every number. Will she? I don't know her. I've only seen her posts. What's your read? My read is, she wants the public version. She wants the version where she's the protagonist. She wants the version where she is moving on, never looking back, queen of her own reel. My read is, she is going to fight you in the comments section for as long as she can, and she is going to keep her lawyers on the phone, and she is going to stay loud, and she is going to keep posting. What do I do? You stop posting. You go silent. You let her post. You reply to nothing. You respond only through me. You reply to no comments, by name, by meme, by direct message. You do not engage. You do not engage in real life, either. You do not go to Carla's. You do not go to Becca. You do not go near any of her friends. You do not go to any of the restaurants where you two had dates. You do not go to the Wicker Park Chapel. You do not go to Cancun. You do not go anywhere that has a memory. You stay in the shop. You stay on the truck. You stay in the bay. You stay under the lift. You stay where your hands can do something. I nodded. And the comment? I said. You leave the comment where it is. You do not delete. You do not edit. You do not add a part 2. You do not follow up. You let it stand. Let it be the artifact. Let it be the timestamp on the box. You cannot unsay it, and you should not want to unsay it. The comment is the receipt. The comment is the line in the sand. You leave the line where it is. Okay. And Lawson? Yeah. If at any point in the next 12 months you feel like you would like to make this public, to write a memoir, to do a podcast, to do a documentary, to do anything, you call me first. You do not sign anything without me. You do not let anyone put a camera in your face without me. You understand? I understand. Good. He closed the folders. I'll send a proposal on Monday, he said. Thank you. You can pay in installments. Will I owe you? Yes. I nodded again. That's what I figured, he said. We both stood. He shook my hand. He had soft hands. They had never turned a wrench in their life. I'm going to end this the way I started it. The comment is still there. In the feed. Under the post. Under the black square. Under the new caption. Under all the follow-up posts. Under all the clarifications. Under all the screenshots that were taken down. Under all the screenshots that were re-uploaded. Under all the stitches. Under all the remixes. Under all the t-shirts. Under all the podcast episodes. Under all the live streams. Under all the merch. Under all the appropriations. Under all the bad faith readings. Under all the good faith readings, too. The comment is still there. 14 words. I paid for half of this. Talk to me like a person. That's the end. That's me. That's the room. That's the engine. That's the bolt. That's the leak. That's the morning. That's the man. That's the man who showed up. That's the 18 words I just typed. That's the 18 words I'm going to keep typing, as long as I have hands under hoods and receipts and notebooks and a kitchen table to sit at and a coffee to drink and a mother to call and a shop to open and a leak to fix and a Civic to return to a woman in Logan Square who has been waiting 8 months for the thing to be right. That's me. That's the only me I have. That's the only me I'm going to sell. That's the only me the internet doesn't get to have. Goodbye.